using infrastructure, using better skills, technology to give people access to high wage, high skills jobs around the whole country. And that's something that I know that the president's engaged in a big program that bears some resemblance to a lot of that agenda. And when it comes to building back better for the world and making sure that we build back greener together, I think that, we're totally on the same page.
That was British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, June 13th, 2021, after a G7 summit. Boris Johnson's slogan, "Build Back Better," was familiar to an American audience, sounding like American President Joe Biden. This is also Boris Johnson a few months later.
Otters are returning to rivers from which they have been absent for decades. Beavers that have not been seen on some rivers since Tudor times, massacred for their pelts and now back. And if that isn't conservatism, my friends, I don't know what is. Build back beaver, I say.
Build back beaver? That's something Joe Biden has never said. And here's more Boris Johnson.
After decades of bewildering refusal, we have persuaded the Americans to import prime British beef, a market already worth £66 million. Build back burger, I say.
Boris Johnson has announced he's stepping down as prime minister. Great Britain soon will have a new leader. So let's say farewell to Boris Johnson in a uniquely American way by hearing his references that sound familiar to, and perhaps even appeal to, and perhaps even amuse American audiences. Where does our journey take us? Beavers? Nope. Burgers? No, not that either. No, we're headed to Hollywood. As you'll hear, Boris Johnson mixes policy and politics with movies, American movies. So grab some popcorn and maybe some fish and chips and haggis as the C-SPAN podcast The Weekly goes to the movies with Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson was born in New York City. In fact, he held U.S. citizenship until 2016, the year he became Britain's foreign secretary. So it's no wonder he's quite familiar with American culture. On October 2nd, 2016, Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson addressed the Conservative Party conference. And that's where we start, with The Sound of Music.
And I was a bit startled by this, and I said, "Hang on, Sergey." Sorry. "Aren't you in favor of democracy?" And then I asked for a show of hands in the room. All those in favor of democracy, please show. And you would have thought that this was a bit like asking Maria von Trapp whether she was in favor of raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. And I'm proud to say that the entire UK side of the room raised their hands as one to show that democracy was indeed one of our favorite things.
2 weeks later, October 13, 2016, Boris Johnson testified before the Foreign Affairs Committee of the British House of Commons. The topic, Spain claiming the Rock of Gibraltar under the Spanish flag. The movie reference, The Godfather.
They can raise it with us, and we simply make our points politely but firmly. And I think of, I remember, if you remember when I think the Spanish foreign minister raised it with me, and I felt that, you remember Marlon Brando in The Godfather? He said, I'm Mr. Barzini, I must tell you, I'm sorry, my answer is no.
September 13th, 2018. Boris Johnson, still Foreign Secretary, has a conversation with Arthur Brooks, president of the American Enterprise Institute. The event starts in Washington, D.C., and ends up in Star Wars.
The last thing we want now is for us, the Brits, having made this momentous decision to go for Brexit, to be sucked back by the tractor beam of Brussels. If tractor beam is the word I want. Into the orbit, the regulatory lunar pull.
Brussels is the Death Star, in case you're not following the reference.
I lived in Brussels. My daughter was born in Brussels.
Some of his best friends are in Brussels.
October 30th, 2019. Now Boris Johnson is Prime Minister. It's the final Prime Minister's questions for Speaker John Bercow, himself a lively and boisterous character. Boris Johnson offers tribute to Speaker Bercow. The movie reference? This time, the one in which Al Pacino plays drug gangster Tony Montana, Scarface.
But, Mr. Speaker, I know the whole House will want to join me in recording that after 10 tumultuous years, this is your last Prime Minister's questions. And as befits a distinguished former Wimbledon competitor, you have sat up there in your high chair, and not just as an umpire, ruthlessly adjudicating on the finer points of parliamentary procedure with your trademark Tony Montana scowl, Mr. Speaker.
In that same farewell speech to John Bercow, Boris Johnson made the bold pivot from Scarface to Blue Eyes. He invoked a legendary singer who appeared in over 40 movies. Please give a warm The Weekly welcome to the chairman of the board, Frank Sinatra.
And you have cared so deeply for the rights of backbenchers that you've done more than anyone since Stephen Hawking to stretch time in this particular session. And as we come to the end of what must be the longest retirement since Frank Sinatra, Mr. Speaker.
September 22nd, 2021, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is addressing the United Nations. He goes Hollywood once again, this time with a movie the General Assembly probably had never heard cited before, the Muppet Movie.
And when Kermit the Frog sang, "It's not easy being green." You remember that one? I want you to know that he was wrong. He was wrong. It is easy. It's not only easy, it's lucrative and it's right to be green. By the way, he was also unnecessarily rude to Miss Piggy, I thought, Kermit the Frog. But it is easy to be green. We have the technology, as we used to say when I was a kid. We can do it.
By the way, if you listen closely, at the end you heard a hint of the $6 million man. We have the technology. 30 seconds later, a rhetorical leap from the Bionic Man to an ancient Greek tragedy playwright.
The poet Sophocles is often quoted, or often quoted by me anyway, as saying that there are many terrifying things in the world, but none is more terrifying than mankind. And it's certainly true that Sophocles was right in that sense, in that our species is uniquely capable of our own destruction and the destruction of everything around us.
The Muppet Movie was not Boris Johnson's first movie reference at the United Nations. Here he is addressing the General Assembly on September 24th, 2019.
As new technologies seem to race towards us from the far horizon, we strain our eyes as they come to make out whether they are for good or bad, friends or foes. AI. What will it mean? Helpful robots washing and caring for an aging population, or pink-eyed Terminators sent back from the future to cull the human race?
Of course, the Terminator had red eyes, not pink. But no worries. Johnson nailed the Terminator reference during his final Prime Minister's questions, July 20th, 2022.
Mission largely accomplished. For now. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all the wonderful staff of the House of Commons. I want to thank all my friends and colleagues. I want to thank my right friend opposite, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank everybody here, and hasta la vista, baby. Thank you.
Now, a bonus clip. Don't want you to think all of Boris Johnson's pop culture references are American. He goes British, too. Still familiar, though, to American audiences. Like this one at a UN climate change conference in Scotland on November 1st, 2021. You'll recognize the famous British movie spy series.
Welcome to Glasgow and to Scotland, whose most globally famous fictional son is almost certainly a man called James Bond, who generally comes to the climax of his highly lucrative films strapped to a doomsday device, desperately trying to work out which coloured wire to pull to turn it off, while a red digital clock ticks down remorselessly to a detonation that will end human life as we know it.
And one more when he addressed the Conservative Party conference, October 2nd, 2019.
If Parliament were a reality TV show, then the whole lot of us, I'm afraid, would have been voted out of the jungle by now. But at least But at least we'd have had the consolation of watching the Speaker being forced to eat a kangaroo testicle.
That rather raw reference was to the famous British TV series, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And Boris Johnson is getting out. His replacement as Prime Minister will be chosen in September. We can't wait to hear which movies he or she enjoys. That's it for this episode of C-SPAN's The Weekly. A reminder, you could do your own searches in the C-SPAN video library. Just go to cspan.org and use the search bar on top. You can find many more Boris Johnson appearances. We'd play a few more clips, but we do have to go now. We have a hard out. What's a hard out? It's a broadcasting term Boris Johnson learned during a February 13, 2015 interview with seasoned journalist Mike Allen. Boris Johnson, then mayor of London, reacted with part amusement, part scoff.
The fashion-forward mayor yesterday learned a new TV term. Tell us the term you learned yesterday. Hard out.
A hard out. Yeah, that's a hard out.
Okay,
a hard out, not to be confused with anything else, but a hard out. A hard out is a
we're just
hard out. Have we got a hard out coming up?
No, we're just about there. We're not there. So we have one more question right here. Red tie.
A hard out.
Thanks for listening. Happy searching, and hasta la vista.